Hi folks, we are back on the dev server taking a look at the IA.58A Pucara. This is going to be coming in as a premium for the German air tree at battle rating 4.3 in rank 4. You can pause here if you want to take a longer look at this stat card. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I'm going to have a full review of this at some point after the update goes live. It's got a really interesting backstory, and it's in sort of a weird position in the game where it's a fairly modern aircraft at a very low BR. It's a low performance plane that was produced relatively recently. Let's take a look at its systems. So on the pilot, you're going to see we have no ballistics computer, no sensors of any kind, nothing. For armaments, we have some 20mm cannons and some 7.62mm Browning machine guns. So fairly sort of medium light armament, about what you'd expect for battle rating 4.3. Let's check out the loadouts. Now, this is an interesting thing. It's got 3 hard points, and let me make this a little smaller. You're going to see the hard points are pretty far out on the wings, and it has a centerline hardpoint under the fuselage. This makes aiming the rockets a little weird, but I'll get to that in a second. The centerline hardpoint can also take a radopod. I'm sorry, a JADOpod, they're listing it as. You get a rocket booster, which is pretty cool. However, if you end up with an air spawn, it's not going to give you the rocket booster. So you only get this if you take off from the runway, even if you have it selected as part of the loadouts. It can also take a torpedo. Not too sure how often you're going to get to use it, but it's there, which I like to see. And a whole bunch of bombs and rocket pods. Now, let's get this thing up into the air. Okay, we are up in the air, and I took off from the runway so that I could get the rocket pods. You can kind of see it's that cluster of 3 under the center of the fuselage there. This is a turboprop aircraft, so it's not especially fast. The acceleration isn't very good. The takeoff run was frankly worse than some regular props, like World War II fighters. You know, again, this was never intended to be a high-performance plane. It didn't need high performance to do counterinsurgency stuff, which is what it was designed for. So, you know, it's a fairly modern aircraft at a fairly low, you know, tier in the game. Anyway, for the guns, relatively decent ballistics on the guns. Let's, not bad there. And while we're here, the inside of the cockpit is actually really nice. I kind of like this. The rearward view is a little obstructed, and frankly, the forward view is a little obstructed as well. But this, I don't know, something about this cockpit just kind of sits right with me. I have a feeling I'm going to like this one with the VR headset. All right, now, the flight performance, of course, as I kind of alluded before, is not great. It's a turboprop, not a jet. Some single-engine props, you know, have better acceleration and climb and everything than this guy does. The turn performance, you can see, I mean, it's not really impressive, even with combat flaps out. You know, I mean, geez, look at that. Yeah, so it's got a little bit of a rough flight envelope. However, the secret weapon is these rocket boosters. We can crank these rocket boosters in, and as you can, you know, check out the airspeed, like, they produce a fair amount of thrust, and they last for quite a while. I haven't timed it, but I tried these out a couple of times, and they lasted a lot longer than I expected them to. So these could end up having a niche use as, like, sort of an escape after a boom and zoom ground attack. You know, where you dive in on something, you launch your rockets or drop your bomb, then pull up and kick the booster for a quick escape to avoid SPAA. So it could be a nice little surprise. Now, this is, in my opinion, going to be the primary weakness with the plane. Look at where these rocket pods are. They are way out on the wingtips. Or, not the wingtips, but they're pretty far out on the wings. They're about halfway out. So aiming them is going to be a little weird. You don't get any convergence settings for rocket pods. I have no idea where these are going to go without a ballistics computer. So, like, you can see there, I sort of impacted on the sides of that Tiger. Like, I was lined up right on him and I had the elevation correct, but all of my rockets landed on either side with none of them actually impacting the target. I think that's going to be a common problem with this plane with the wing-mounted weapons. Now, if you only take the rocket pods, like in the center line station there, instead of the rocket booster, then you're not going to have this problem, but like, you're going to have to aim to the side if you actually want to hit the target. So I'm not a huge fan of that. So we'll see what happens once the update goes live. I have a feeling this plane is not going to be an especially strong performer in the game just because its flight performance is so poor, and the issue with the outboard weapons not being able to have any sort of a convergence setting and no ballistics computer, so they're going to be hard to aim anyway. But I will eventually have a full review of this. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel to check that out so that, if nothing else, you can hear all about the really interesting history behind this plane. As always, thanks for watching.